I am Lori Murray, President of the Committee for Economic Development of the Conference Board. No one could have predicted the confluence of events just a few months ago, beginning with the COVID-19 pandemic, the ensuing economic crisis, and the killing of George Floyd, followed by the seismic protests driving a sea change in public consciousness. CEOs across the corporate landscape have added their voices to the discussion and are determined to use their influence to make lasting change. For over 100 years, the Conference Board has helped the world's leading companies and society at large navigate crises and developed reasoned solutions in our nation's interest. Founded amid labor unrest in 1916, the Conference Board led the adoption of workplace safety reforms, compulsory health insurance, and the 8-hour workday. We are at the forefront of the conversations regarding the opening of the workplace to women, people of color, and people with disabilities. Our Policy Center, the Committee for Economic Development, which I lead, helped shape the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after World War II, as well as the Jobs Act of 1946, which set forth even further workplace reforms. That tradition continues today with our efforts to shape public policy that impacts our workplace, communities, and government. Given recent events, the Conference Board is launching a series of CEO forums to foster action called Building a More Civil and Just Society. The CEO Forum series features CEOs from across American industry who will focus on actionable insights to address our societal challenges. And today we're talking to Mike Petters, who is President and CEO of Huntington Ingalls Industries, America's largest military shipbuilding company and a provider of professional services to partners in government and industry. He is also a member of the board of directors. Mike previously served as president of Northrop Grumman's shipbuilding and as president of Northrop Grumman's Newport News sector. A native of Florida, Mike earned a bachelor's degree in physics from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1982, served aboard the nuclear-powered submarine USS George Bancroft, and spent 5 years in the U.S. Naval Reserve. In 1993, he earned an MBA from the College of William & Mary. Mike is a member of the Aerospace Industries Association's Executive Committee. He serves on the board of directors for the National Association of Manufacturers. He also serves on the board of advisors for the Center for New American Security and the Distinguished Advisory Board for the Dolphin Scholarship Foundation. In 2017, Mike received the Committee for Economic Development's O&B Butler Education Excellence Award, which recognizes an individual's exceptional commitment to quality education, skills development, and workforce development programs. And that's what we're fortunate to talk to Mike about today, which is what role education can play in building a more civil and just society, what are the critical skills for success, and how companies can support those efforts. So Mike, I'd like to start a little bit more broadly though, and get your perspective on the events following the murder of George Floyd, and how you would characterize the social state of our nation. And do you see this as a different time for America? We've had issues of racism and inequality have been at the forefront of our civil discussions over the years. But is this different? Is there a chance for real positive change now that might be possible?
Lori, thanks for having me today. It's always an honor to be with you all and a pleasure to be with you, because we always seem to be talking about those intractable challenges that the nation is facing or our businesses are facing, and so engaging on that with you is always stimulating for me. I think there's a lot in the question that you asked. I think that the work that's gone on over all the years before us kind of sets the stage for the work that we're doing now, and the work that we do now will set the stage for work in the future. So while it's tempting to say that we're at an inflection point, and boy, it would be great if we could wake up in so many days or months or years and say that that was the point that tumbled everything over and suddenly everything got better. I think that our experience would say that this is the next step in the process. And so while I'm encouraged by the the activity. I'm encouraged by the awareness. I think there's a lot more penetration of awareness into the institutions and the fabric of the country today. There is just so much to do for me to step back and think that this is going to be something that we can solve, in a matter of, in some kind of time frame. So, not to be pessimistic, I just think that's kind of where my realism is going forward.
So what do you think needs to happen to establish a truly just society? What changes do you think are most important that need to be made, and what role do CEOs play in making those changes?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of basic things. I mean, you can make a long laundry list of stuff that has to be done that actually is longer than any institution can actually do in any reasonable amount of time. But I think if we could kind of focus on just a couple of principles that, at least for me, have served me very well over the years. The first one is you play the way you practice. I had a friend of mine tell me that if you have a family reunion, for instance, and there's some kind of rift in the family somewhere, even if the family reunion is for like 1 hour every 2 years, if there's some kind of rift in the family, it's going to show up in that hour. And so that means that you have to work on if you're going to be together for an hour, you got to work on that time in the 2 years in the intervening. You got to go make sure that the rifts are not there, and so you got to smooth that out, and you got to work on those things. You can't ignore them. I think what we're seeing today in this country is there's divisions in the country. There have been divisions in the country. There have been pretty substantial divisions going on day in and day out for quite a while. Some would argue all of our lives. But they seem to be exacerbated. And then when you put them under the pressure of, pick your crisis, the pandemic, the security, the global competition and security, or the Floyd moment in terms of racial relations, any one of those crises would reveal the cracks in the society. So I think that you have to play the way you practice, which means day in and day out, you got to work on mending those cracks. It may just be a small one. It's not a big one. And it may be just with the person that lives next door. But I don't think if you're not working on that, then you're not contributing to the overall solution. And when we are under pressure, they're going to show up again. And I think the second principle that I would put out there for consideration is, it's about time that we start believing our indications. That's a key tenet. You mentioned that I was in the nuclear Navy. That is a fundamental principle of the nuclear Navy, is believe your indications. It's really easy to look at a gauge and see a needle that's pointing to something that you've never seen it before. You've never seen it point at that before. And you would say, oh, wait a minute, that's not right. You would explain it away in some way. And what happens is that just makes a really big problem get a lot bigger. And so from the first day in that program, they teach you believe your indications and react to them. I think we've got so many indications of challenges in our society, and we've got to stop trying to explain them away. And instead, we've got to step into them and say, if this actually is true, what do we do about that? And how do we deal with that? I think those two things, if we could just kind of come to an agreement on, let's believe our indications, and let's play the way we're going to practice, or let's practice the way we want to play, then I think that it may be a 75% solution, but it would be progress.
So, Mike, you've been playing a really prominent role on education issues. And as I mentioned, the Committee for Economic Development actually awarded you for this role in 2017. You've been pushing for change on all levels: early education, K through 12, post-secondary. What are the disparities that you're seeing? What's motivated you to focus on these education issues as passionately and determinedly as you have? What do you see that needs to be fixed, and how are you addressing them?
Well, I come to it honestly. My wife is a teacher, and our daughters are teachers, and so the dinner conversation is generally about what's happening in the classroom today, or what's happening in education today. So that's a place where I spent a lot of time just with my family. I would say there's a host of challenges in the educational system today that there are people a lot smarter than me that are a lot more qualified to talk to than I am to talk about. I'm more in the mode of, well, okay, I don't know if this is the biggest problem, but I know that this is a problem and maybe we can do something about it. One thing that I am intensely focused on, my wife and I are both very focused on, is there's a Gordian knot sitting at the intersection of educational access and economic challenges. That problem where people can change their circumstance in this country, which is that's the American dream, is that you can change your trajectory in life in this country more so than anywhere else. That your limit to doing that is somewhat limited because of this Gordian knot that sits around economic disadvantage. And the economic disadvantage then splits into, there's racial issues, there's neighborhood issues, there's all kinds of data out there that goes after that. We put a lot of energy into, let's just make sure that we try to create more access for folks who have those kinds of challenges. And so that's kind of the point that we are on. A lot of people are on that point. I can't say that we had any keen insight into it. I think we just looked around, and as my dad would say, that's low-hanging fruit. So let's go work on that, because you're going to change lives, and even if you only change one life, that's worth doing. So that's kind of my focus, our focus today.
So looking at that access as a really important change that needs to be made, how are you actually doing that? How are you ensuring that children on all economic levels have the access that they need?
Well, we've done some things. A lot of companies do a lot of things. In our company, we do, like a lot of companies, where we provide scholarships for children of our employees, to post-secondary scholarships for maybe going to a community college for an associate's degree, or going to a four-year institution for your bachelor's degree. But I think we broke some ground when we decided that we were also going to provide economic support for the children of our employees to go to preschool. It's one thing to have high school juniors and seniors compete for scholarships. They've got a resume, they've got a record, and all that sort of thing. It's an entirely different thing to say we want to give a four-year-old a scholarship to go to preschool, and provide an opportunity where there may not have been one. And at this point, I have to say that's one of the most successful programs that I've seen in this area, just because you get kids going to school that may not have gone to school otherwise. You get parents of those children who now have a much deeper engagement with the company, because they understand, hey, this company is actually trying to support the investment that we're making in the employees. We're not only investing in the employees, we're investing in their children and in their families. And so that's been a twofer for us. And in the meantime, we've had a few hundred kids now who've, a few years into the program, we've had a few hundred kids who've gotten off to a good start, with an early childhood development program that now is going to serve them well throughout the rest of their lives. And so that's a very exciting program for us, and very proud to have been part of that.
So, Mike, at CED, we have been dedicated for years in terms of both researching and analyzing the importance of early education, and a lot of that focuses on the skills that can be developed, and the importance of developing those skills early. Just want to step back a little. You're at the point of the spear in terms of U.S. national security, running the largest shipbuilding company in the United States, U.S. competitiveness, and just like you talk about, what do you see as the most critical skills that are needed for success in today and tomorrow's economy? And how have you been focusing on developing those skills?
Wow, what a great question. I think from a national security standpoint, I'm going to step kind of above the shipbuilding business and kind of talk broader about the nation. I think that one of the divisive things that's happened here is that we've allowed ourselves to become very intellectually comfortable. We like our little echo chambers. We like to read things that reinforce our views. And we've kind of lost a little bit of our natural intellectual curiosity. I don't agree with you, but I sure like to understand better why you think the way you do, for instance. That seems to have been kind of pushed aside, and that really contributes to, I think, a lot of the cracks that you see in our society today. And so when you start talking about education, you want to really stimulate that intellectual curiosity. You want to have folks who are open to the ideas that they may not necessarily agree with, or they just want to find out more, and maybe they can come and then synthesize what they know to create a kind of a view. That synthesis can be religious, it can be political, it can actually be vocational. I decided to go into physics and nuclear power at a point in time where I thought that nuclear power was going to be a great way for the country to get its energy. I was very wrong on that, but it was also, I was able to make those choices because I had looked around at all the possible things that I could do. And that was a way for me to kind of find my own path. I think that creating that intellectual curiosity through our educational systems is a critical skill set that we've got to recover.
And just one other closing question here, because I also know that you've been providing early leadership on this new program in Virginia Ready, to help train furloughed, unemployed workers who are dealing with the COVID crisis and try to ameliorate the disparities that we're seeing in terms of who's being hit and who's being hit the hardest. I'm just wondering if you could just give us a little bit of insights into what that collaborative program is between the state of Virginia, the academic institutions, and corporate leadership.
Wow. I was honored to, Glenn Youngkin called me. He was the genesis of the idea at Carlisle. He called me and asked for my take on it. But Glenn is, he kind of pushed this rock off the hill, and he's done yeoman's work to get this moving. And his idea is pretty simple. We've got a lot of people out there right now who want to work, who cannot work. Let's get them re-skilled for the next set of jobs that are coming, so that we don't waste this time. I think that's actually very, very good, a very good idea, very thoughtful, and it's also very strategic. I have had a very long-standing, and our company has had a very long-standing relationship with the community college system in Virginia. And so I helped Glenn kind of get close to them in a way that you could really kind of hit the ground running at scale, as opposed to turning in a pilot program and kind of working our way through this. Because quite frankly, the window of when we have people who want to work but cannot work because of the pandemic, I would like to say it may be longer than we hope, but at least we would like to think that it's a finite window. And so in that case, you don't have a lot of time. So let's move out on this, and let's move out pretty fast. Clearly, Glenn and the other partners here deserve a lot of credit for the way that they've jumped into this and are turning it into something that I think will make Virginia unique.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for what you are doing and especially in this very important area of education in terms of helping to really build a more civil and just society. And on behalf of the Conference Board and the Committee for Economic Development, thank you on behalf of all of us. And thank you for joining us in this discussion and for all that you're doing.
Well, Lori, it's great to see you again, and I appreciate all that the Conference Board is doing and the CED is doing. It's great to be part of that, and the work you guys have been doing during this crisis has really been exceptional, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.